The first time I saw them, they were already trespassing. Three men in stiff uniforms, too clean, too new, stood at the edge of my fence line like movie extras who'd wandered off set. The morning sun cut through the cedar trees, casting long shadows across the frost-tipped pasture. My cattle didn't even flinch. They just kept chewing. I just poured my second cup of coffee when the lead guy raised a megaphone. Dalton Mitchell, cease operations immediately. This property is now under emergency compliance review by the Sage Creek Homeowners Enforcement Authority. I stood there on my porch in flannel and boots, coffee steaming in one hand, the other resting on the railing built by my grandfather's hands. I didn't move. Not yet, because that's how war starts out here. Not with bullets, but with paper and bullhorns. This land's been in my family since 1952. My grandfather came back from Korea, bought it with his GI Bill, and swore no man in a suit would ever steal it out from under his bloodline. Every post, every inch of barbed wire, every cow out in that pasture. Earned. But no one warns you that the thieves nowadays wear cardigans, not ski masks. That they use city ordinances instead of crowbars. And they send people like Vivian Cromwell. She's not here yet, but her perfume already is. I swear you can smell her before you see her. Something floral and synthetic that doesn't belong within 50 miles of diesel fuel and cowhide. The lead officer adjusted his plastic badge, the kind you buy for a Halloween costume, and started reading from a clipboard like he was quoting scripture. Under Section 14C of the Sage Creek Environmental Clean Zone Accord, son, I cut him off. You're quoting make-believe laws on land that's older than your driver's license. He blinked. Probably didn't expect resistance this early. I guess when you've bullied enough elderly homeowners with cracked sidewalks, you start thinking everyone folds easy. They don't fold out here. They brace. I could hear my grandfather's voice like gravel under my boots. Bullies use rules as weapons. Your job is knowing which ones are real. So I waited. Let them finish their show. Watch them gesture and posture, issuing threats wrapped in laminated nonsense. What they didn't know, and what would soon cost them dearly, is that my cousin Jake just happens to be the sheriff of this county. And Jake doesn't take kindly to men pretending to be something they're not, especially not on his bloodline soil. Inside the house, on the old oak table, sat every deed, map, tax record, and legal document this ranch has ever touched, in a weathered binder passed down like scripture. That land's been carved, fenced, and fenced again. It knows its borders better than they do, better than I do some days. But today, those fake cops, their plastic badges, and their smug little golf cart cross a line. I took one slow step off the porch, then another. Last warning, Halloween badge said, hand on a spray-painted holster that probably held pepper spray and a stapler. I stopped 5 feet from the gate, took a sip of coffee, and smiled. You boys brought a clipboard to a land war. Out in the pasture, the cattle watched quietly. That's the thing about cows. They don't panic unless something's really wrong. And today, they weren't afraid of these clowns. Neither was I. Because when you threaten a man's land, you don't just threaten his income. You threaten his blood, his memory, his children's future. And some of us, we were raised to fight when cornered. I didn't see her car arrive. I felt it. A silence fell over the pasture like animals sensing a coming storm. Even the wind paused. Then the soft crunch of gravel under low-profile tires broke the stillness. Vivian Cromwell emerged from her white Lexus like a snake shedding its skin. Every movement precise, expensive, and out of place. She wore heels that should have sunk into my dirt driveway, but didn't. Probably custom, made for walking over men like me. "Mr. Mitchell," she called, already halfway up the path without an invitation. "You and I need to have a civil conversation before this escalates further." She clutched a leather binder like a weapon, its surface gleaming under the Texas sun. Her blazer was bone white. Not a speck of dust dared touch her. I stayed on the porch, arms folded, eyes level. "You sent fake cops to threaten my cattle. Your past conversation." Vivian's smile was the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that says she's already decided who you are and where you belong. That was merely an attempt at friendly compliance outreach. Unfortunately, it seems you've chosen a more combative posture. She took a slow, deliberate step up the porch. You've been operating in violation of multiple Sage Creek enhancement clauses, Mr. Mitchell. Unapproved fencing. Livestock-related odor violations. Non permitted outbuildings. And of course, water usage noncompliance. My jaw tensed. I don't live in Sage Creek. You built that development next to me, not over me. That's where you're mistaken, she replied, pulling a paper from her binder and holding it like scripture. Due to shared aquifer rights and environmental zoning overlays, your ranch now falls under Sage Creek's extended governance jurisdiction. Clause 12A. You wrote that clause, didn't you? Vivian blinked, just once, but I saw it. A flicker of something behind the polished exterior. Maybe irritation. Maybe fear. I helped clarify the policy, she said. Our community values are evolving, and unfortunately, antiquated operations like yours pose aesthetic and environmental challenges. There it was. The truth beneath the perfume. They didn't want the cows gone because they were dangerous. They wanted the smell gone, the dust, the inconvenience. My entire way of life reduced to a blemish on someone else's postcard view. I took the paper, read 2 lines, then handed it back. This land's been ranch since your development was a blueprint in a banker's briefcase. My water rights go back to 1952, and you're not taking them with a laminated citation and a smile. Vivian's expression cooled to something steelier. Mr. Mitchell, stubborn men tend to learn hard lessons. You can either modernize or become a cautionary tale. Trust me, the board prefers cooperative exits. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. After she left, the air felt heavier. Even the sunlight seemed colder. I sat on the porch, hands shaking, not with fear, with memory. My father's funeral. My kids playing in the creek behind the barn. The day I signed divorce papers and realized the only thing left that hadn't left me was this land. I called my daughter that night. Told her the cows were okay. Told her I missed her. She didn't say much. Teenagers don't. But she asked if she could bring a friend next weekend to help bottle feed the calves. That nearly broke me. Because I knew, if Vivian got her way, there might not be a next weekend. Later, while replacing fence boards Vivian's fake enforcers had tagged, I found a piece of torn paper under a post. HOA complaint form, and signed, but clearly official looking. The language was technical, but the tone was familiar. It said infestation, non-conforming structure, threat to adjacent property values. They weren't just trying to find me. They were building a case. And in their eyes, I wasn't a man. I was a problem, a crack in the fantasy they were selling. But here's what Vivian didn't know. This dirt has teeth, and it remembers every boot that's tried to stomp it. It started with the cattle refusing to drink. At first, I thought maybe the tanks were dry or the pipes had clogged. But when I checked, the troughs were full. Still, not a single one of my Angus touched a drop. They just stood there, anxious, their noses flaring, backing away like the water itself was growling. I leaned down and caught it, a strange sheen on the surface. Oil, maybe, or something worse. The faint smell of chemicals cut through the usual sense of hay and iron. That's when my stomach dropped. I grabbed a flashlight and followed the pipe from the main tank, heart thudding like a warning bell. The lock on the well access hatch had been snapped clean off. That wasn't weather. That was intent. I yanked open the hatch, and the stench nearly knocked me back. Sweet and sharp. Antifreeze. Someone had poured it directly into my water supply. And not just a little. Enough to kill every cow I owned. I called Jake. He didn't ask questions. Just said, "Don't touch a thing," and hung up. By the time the sheriff's cruiser rolled up, the cattle were clustered near the fence line, spooked and quiet. That's how you know it's bad, when even animals can feel the violation. Jake stepped out in full uniform. Cowboy Hatlo, Yavticht. He didn't come to play family today. He came to protect the law. Someone tried to poison your herd, he said, crouching by the tank. You realize if they drank this, you'd be looking at a mass grave right now. I nodded, jaw clenched. My hands shook with a slow-burning fury. I've got kids coming this weekend, I said. They like to help with the morning chores. That tank's 50 feet from the chicken coop. They could have, I know, Jake cut in, voice steel. We both stood silent for a long moment. Two men staring down into the darkness of a poisoned well, each seeing more than water. An hour later, we checked the feed shed. The lock had been sealed shut, superglue. Inside, someone had slashed open half the bags and scattered gasoline over the floor, cutting small ventilation holes near the roof. They weren't just trying to kill my cattle now. They were building a bomb. Jake looked around the shed, then looked at me. This ain't about citations anymore. This is arson. Attempted murder, if we get the right DA. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling a forensic team. Before I could respond, headlights flickered from the hilltop near the Sage Creek gate. A sleek white SUV idled there like a specter, engine humming, facing my property. No one stepped out, but I didn't need to. I knew who it was. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat on the porch, shotgun resting across my lap. Not because I wanted to use it, because I needed to remember I could. The stars looked different, less like pinpricks of light and more like tiny holes punched through a curtain, as if something darker waited behind. At 3:07 a.m., the trail cameras pinged my phone. 3 figures in black hoodies. 2 at the fence. 1 near the barn. They moved slow, like they'd done this before. But they hadn't done it with me. I watched them in real time from my phone. The new cellular cameras streamed everything straight to cloud backup. They cut the same fence panel Vivian's officers had sighted last week. 2 carried jugs. The third had bolt cutters. 1 turned, and the trail cam caught his face full on. Buck Hargrove, the rent-a-cop from the HOA. Spray-painted badge, squeaky shoes, and now, breaking and entering with intent to kill. I recorded all. Every frame. Every footstep. The evidence so clear you could read the label on the poison jug. I didn't call Jake this time. I sent him the video. His reply came 1 minute later. You just caught them. We got them cold. That was the moment everything changed. No more citations. No more board meetings. This wasn't property law anymore. This was war. Not metaphorical. Not legal. Actual war. Because someone crossed a line tonight, from harassment to attempted destruction. And they did it thinking I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. By Friday morning, I wasn't just a rancher anymore. I was a headline. Toxic ranch threatens luxury community. Local sheriff silent on cousins' violations. Children at risk near a legal slaughter site. They'd taken the battle off the land and into the living room. Vivian Cromwell had moved fast. She called a press conference under the guise of a community safety update, positioning herself against a backdrop of crying homeowners and pixelated photos of my ranch. I saw the broadcast on a mounted TV in town, grainy stills of cattle in motion, cropped to look like they were charging at school children. Those weren't even my cows. I hadn't lost a single head to disease, but there she was, holding up forged CDC letters and speaking about a potential outbreak zone with zoonotic transfer risk. I didn't even know what the hell that meant. The anchor looked stunned. I just looked tired. Jake came by that afternoon with a tight-lipped expression he wore the day our father died. He dropped a manila envelope on my kitchen table. Inside were printouts, emails, reports, and photos, all from government agencies. All filed by the HOA or one of its shell groups, he said. They've triggered formal inspections from EPA, USDA, even Homeland. I stared at the pile. Every paper a threat, wrapped in bureaucratic ink. They're playing the long game, I muttered. Wear me down. Smear me until even the truth looks suspicious. Jake nodded slow. And they're not done. He slid a school notice across the table. I didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to read what I already knew. Due to ongoing investigation, Mitchell family students will be restricted from field trips and extracurriculars pending safety review. My daughter, punished because her father owned a ranch someone else wanted. I rubbed my face. Felt the weight, not just behind my eyes, but in my chest, my gut, my bones. I wasn't just being erased. I was being rewritten. Jake stood. They're coming after your life. Not just your land. We need it back now. I looked at him. I have evidence. Cameras, statements, recordings. We need more than evidence, he said. We need momentum. People. Community. Community? I laughed bitterly. Half of them crossed the street when they saw me yesterday. They're scared, Jake said. Vivian's good at that. But scared people follow whoever speaks louder, not whoever's right. That night, Constance Winters came by with a thick binder and enough righteous fury to burn down the gates of Sage Creek. She's been forging emergency authorization letters, she said, slapping documents on the table. Claiming contamination risk gives her power to bypass standard legal channels. And the county's just letting it happen. The county didn't know. Until now. She pointed to a document. I recognized it. The same Emergency Seizure Act Vivian had waved around at her press conference. There is no such act. It doesn't exist. The file number is made up. She faked a law? She invented one, Constance said. And the media bought it because it sounded official and scary. We both sat in silence, the weight of it building like pressure behind drywall. Then she added quietly, she's done this before. I have statements from 2 other counties. She picks vulnerable properties, smears the owners, forces sales. Every time, same tactics, different names. How many? At least 7 families that I could find. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, but because I finally understood what we were up against. Vivian wasn't just a corrupt HOA president. She was running a criminal operation. A perfectly rehearsed play performed on different stages, over and over. And this time, I was supposed to be the final act. The man who breaks. The father who loses his children. The rancher who fades into unsafe footnotes. But I wasn't going to break. I was going to end it. Saturday morning, Jake stood in my driveway with a laptop and a coffee thermos. Tomorrow, he said, Vivian's hosting a town hall to push for emergency seizure of your land. She thinks the audience is hers. Jake's eyes narrowed. She forgot I wear a badge. And I've got the evidence she's never seen coming. He pulled up a video, trail cam footage of Buck Hargrove cutting fences, pouring chemicals, staging scenes. Tomorrow, Jake said, we bring the truth to her stage. I looked out at the pasture. Wind sweeping across the tall grass. The land didn't tremble. It waited. They held the town hall in the Sage Creek Auditorium, a whitewashed box of fluorescent lights, folding chairs, and forced civility. Every seat was full. Nearly 200 residents packed the room, their faces a mix of fear, confusion, and expectation. A giant projector glowed blue behind the podium. The stage was set, and Vivian Cromwell owned it. She stepped up in an ivory blazer, clutching her signature binder like a holy book. The microphone caught her perfectly rehearsed sigh. We've done everything we could to protect this community. But some threats, they require action. Images flashed behind her. Overflowing feed bins, water troughs, a shadowed silhouette that could have been any man working a ranch. The captions read, Environmental risk, non-compliance zone, public safety hazard. Her voice dropped to a murmur, soft enough to sound motherly. I take no pleasure in this. But when children can't walk safely to school because dangerous livestock roam freely, when neighbors live in fear of contamination, we must act. She turned the page in her binder. I hereby invoke emergency enforcement under the Sage Creek Protection Mandate and call for immediate property seizure of the Mitchell Ranch. For a second, the room didn't move. Then, hold it right there, came a voice from the back. It cut clean through the microphone's echo, hard and grounded like steel on concrete. Jake Mitchell, uniformed, badge polished, walked steady. Not a cousin today. Not a man. A lawman. The auditorium shifted. All eyes turned. Vivian froze. Jake strode down the aisle, laptop in hand. A flash drive dangled from his fingers. Before you burn a man's legacy, maybe you ought to look at what's really on fire. He walked up the side steps, faced the projector, and plugged it in. The screen blinked. Then, black and white night vision footage. 3 men, one with bolt cutters, one with a gas can, one pouring liquid into a trough. Buck Hargrove, the same man Vivian had once called her compliance director, clearly visible, caught red-handed. The room gasped. A woman near the front covered her mouth. Then more, audio of Buck bragging to his buddy about scaring the rancher into selling. Vivian's voice on a phone call. Make it look bad enough. He won't last a month. A scanned copy of the forged law sheet cited, with digital fingerprints traced back to her personal printer. Jake turned to the crowd, slow and deliberate. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been lied to, manipulated, used, all for one purpose, to steal land. His voice cracked for a second. Not weakness, but something heavier. She didn't just target my cousin. She's done this across 3 counties. 7 families lost homes. One couple nearly lost their lives in a fire she staged to force evacuation. He stared at Vivian. I've already filed charges with the state attorney general. White froth, conspiracy, evidence tampering, impersonation of law enforcement. Your HOA isn't just corrupt, it's a front. Vivian stepped forward, clutching the podium, her calm unraveling. This is character assassination. None of this proves intent. Jake didn't flinch. It proves criminal enterprise. Then he handed her a warrant. Signed. Sealed. Sheriff's office. You're under arrest. Vivian blinked, not in shock, but like her mask had finally slipped. She looked around for an ally, for someone, anyone, to validate the illusion. No one moved. Behind her, the projector still ran. A final image appeared. Dalton Mitchell, standing at his fence, sun on his face, daughter by his side, laughing. The room fell silent. Not from fear, from shame. When they cuffed her, she didn't scream. She just looked small. Not powerful. Not dangerous. Just small. I stood in the back. Didn't need to say a word. Didn't need to smile. The land would handle that for me. Because the dirt doesn't lie. And tonight, the truth finally stood tall on it. 6 months later, the wind felt different. Not lighter, exactly, just honest. There was no longer a war in the soil, no scent of dread in the hay. My daughter sat barefoot on the porch rail, humming some pop song I didn't recognize while feeding a bottle to a new calf. Her friend, a city kid with glitter on her boots, giggled every time the calf's tongue licked her wrist. The laughter sounded like healing. Vivian Cromwell pled guilty to 15 felony counts. The judge called it one of the most calculated fraud schemes in modern property law. She'll be trading that white blazer for an orange jumpsuit until my cattle are old and gray. The HOA? Dissolved. Every fake contract, every forged policy, every absurd fee gone. Sage Creek now has a new board made up of actual neighbors instead of corporate predators. The first rule they passed: no authority over legacy land. Jake and I talk every Friday night now. We don't say much about the past anymore. Just bourbon, firelight, and long silences that say what words never could. The land didn't just bring us back together. It reminded us what was worth staying together for. He still wears the badge, but now there's a weight lifted off his shoulders. He told me once that Vivian's operation wasn't the first time he'd seen power go feral, just the closest it ever got to our bloodline. People started showing up after the trial. Reporters, sure. Some ranchers. A few politicians. But it was the quiet ones who stayed. The Garcias, who lost their farm in the county next door. The Petersons, who nearly lost their house to one of Vivian's fake fire code violations. An old widow named Ruth, who brought me lemon bars and said her HOA fined her husband for non-compliant gardening 2 weeks before he passed. I built a table under the big pecan tree. It's long and sturdy. We sit there sometimes, just folks with stories and scar tissue, passing down warnings and wisdom. We don't talk about revenge. We talk about protection. About how to outlast storms in 3-piece suits. I still get letters. Some are angry. Why don't you let progress happen? Why fight so hard for dirt and cows? But most are something else. They come from Idaho, Kansas, the Carolinas. People who say, your story gave me the strength to say no. I thought I was crazy until I read what you went through. They tried the same thing here. But this time we had proof. One woman signed her letter from one stubborn soul to another. I framed it. This land still has its scars. The fence line where they cut through. The tank I never bothered to replace. The shed that still smells faintly like gasoline if the sun hits just right. But scars are part of living things. And this land, it's alive. We started something called the Legacy Project. Jake, Constance, and me. A free legal kit for rural families. It's simple stuff. How to check HOA legitimacy. What to record, how to spot fraud. We've helped over 200 families so far. It's not flashy, but it's real. Kind of like ranching. At night, when the sun slides behind the mesquite trees and the wind shifts from dry to soft, I walk the fence. Same way my grandfather did. Same way my father did. The barbed wire is still 1952 vintage in some parts. Non-compliant, according to Vivian. Perfect, according to me. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the whole war was never about zoning or bylaws or goats or groundwater. Maybe it was about this simple truth. Some things shouldn't be easy to steal. The cows low softly in the distance. My daughter sings while the porch swing creaks behind her. There's diesel in the air, hay in the wind, and peace in my chest. This land remembers. So do I. And now, so does everyone else.